you're not awakening. You're in a spiritual emergency, and Carl Jung knew exactly why most women don't make it through. It's not weakness. It's not lack of commitment. It's that you're using the wrong map, following guides who've never actually made the journey themselves. The anxiety that keeps you awake at 3 in the morning. The isolation that makes you feel like an alien in your own life. The sensation that you're losing your mind while everyone around you seems perfectly fine, still shopping, still gossiping, still living in the illusion you can no longer stomach. That's not your awakening going wrong. That is the awakening. Jung called it the night sea journey, a descent so dark, so devastating to everything you thought you were, that most women do one of 3 things. They run back to sleep, convincing themselves it was just a phase, just stress, just hormones. They experience complete functional collapse, unable to work, parent, or maintain basic routines. Or they fake it, creating a spiritual persona even more false than the people-pleasing mask they tried to escape. Today, I'm going to show you exactly what Jung discovered about why spiritual awakening is the most dangerous journey a woman can take. The 3 specific psychological traps that destroy most awakening women, and Jung's exact techniques for navigating each one without losing yourself, your sanity, or everything you've built. But before we go deeper into this life-changing wisdom, if you're a woman who's tired of surface-level spirituality and ready to understand the real psychology of transformation, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because what we're about to explore will separate those truly ready for awakening from those just collecting spiritual experiences. Your inner wise woman is calling, and she needs you to understand what's really happening. Jung didn't just study spiritual awakening, he lived it. At 38, successful, respected, at the peak of his career, Jung deliberately walked into what he called his confrontation with the unconscious. For 6 years, he recorded visions so intense, voices so real, experiences so shattering that he wrote in his journal, "I was menaced by a psychosis." He saw floods of blood covering Europe, spoke with the dead, encountered figures from the depths of the psyche that most people never touch. His family thought he'd lost his mind. His colleagues abandoned him. He nearly lost everything. But what he found in that darkness became the map that could save your life. Not just your spiritual life, but your actual psychological survival as a woman navigating awakening in a world that wants you asleep, compliant, and small. Here's what Jung discovered that changes everything about how women experience spiritual awakening. It's not what the spiritual teachers sell you. It's not ascending to light, transcending your humanity, or becoming peaceful, enlightened, and special. It's the systematic destruction of every lie you've used to stay safe in a world that punishes women for being powerful. Jung saw it clearly. Humans need illusions to function. We need our personas, our people-pleasing masks, our comfortable unconsciousness. These aren't character flaws. They're psychological survival mechanisms that women especially develop to navigate a world that often demands we shrink, smile, and accommodate. And spiritual awakening strips them all away. Not gently, not with love and light, but with the kind of brutality that makes you literally lose contact with the ordinary reality everyone else still inhabits. Your psyche doesn't want you to wake up. It wants you to survive, and it will fight your awakening with weapons you don't even know you're carrying. Jung identified 3 specific ways the psyche destroys women during awakening. 3 psychological landmines that detonate the moment you get too close to truth. Unless you know exactly what they are and how they work, you won't survive what's coming. The first trap has already started. You just don't recognize it yet because it's disguised as spiritual progress. It's wearing the mask of your highest aspirations while secretly feeding on your psychological foundations. Jung saw this pattern destroy his most promising female patients. The ones who seemed to be advancing fastest were often the ones falling hardest. You think you're becoming more spiritual, more evolved, more awakened, you're actually becoming more dangerous to yourself. Jung discovered something that shatters every comfortable spiritual teaching. The more light you claim, the darker your shadow grows. Not metaphorically. Literally. Psychologically. Measurably. Every meditation session where you visualize yourself in white light, every affirmation about being love and peace, every attempt to raise your vibration and transcend your anger, your sexuality, your power. If you're not simultaneously descending into your shadow, you're not awakening, you're inflating. And inflation leads to explosion. Here's what's really happening in your psyche right now. All your life, you've pushed parts of yourself into the shadow. Your rage, unacceptable for a good woman. Your selfishness, shameful for someone who's supposed to care for everyone else. Your sexual darkness, terrifying for someone raised to be pure. Your power, too dangerous for a world that prefers you small. Even your joy, too vulnerable to express fully. You buried these aspects so deep you forgot they existed. You built a persona so convincing, the nice girl, the good mother, the spiritual woman, the helper, the healer, that you believed it was you. But Jung discovered something terrifying. The shadow doesn't just contain what you've rejected. It contains the opposite of everything you've claimed to be. If you've built an identity on being kind and nurturing, your shadow contains cruelty and indifference. If you pride yourself on being the responsible one who holds everything together, your shadow is pure chaos and destruction. If you're the spiritual woman who's transcended ego, your shadow holds a ravenous hunger for recognition and power. Then awakening starts, and the shadow doesn't dissolve. It erupts. Jung watched a female patient, a perfect spiritual teacher, never angry, always loving, meditated for hours daily. Then the dreams started. Violence, raw sexuality, murderous rage directed at the people she was supposed to be healing. She thought she was becoming evil, possessed, losing her spirituality. Jung told her a truth that initially destroyed her. You're not becoming evil. You're becoming whole. And wholeness includes everything you've rejected about yourself as a woman. She couldn't handle it. She doubled down on meditation, tried to pray away the shadow, increased her spiritual practices. 2 years later, complete functional collapse. She couldn't get out of bed, couldn't care for her children, couldn't maintain the persona that had defined her entire life. Why? Because the shadow isn't your enemy. Jung called it the seed of creativity. Every ounce of power you've disowned as a woman lives there. Every drop of authenticity you've rejected to be loved and accepted. Every spark of life force you've deemed unacceptable for a good woman. Jung discovered this through his own shadow work. He found a figure he called Philemon, an ancient wise presence living in his unconscious. But to reach that wisdom, he first had to face what he called his murder fantasies, violent images of killing, destruction, chaos. He didn't run from them. He painted them, wrote them, dialogued with them. And through that descent, he found not evil, but untapped creative force. The women who survive awakening don't fight the shadow. They feed it. They ask it, what truth are you carrying that I've been too afraid to hold? What power have I rejected to stay safe? What part of my wildness did I bury to be acceptable? But here's what makes this even harder for women. Spiritual communities especially hate the female shadow. They'll teach you to love and light your way past your anger, to transcend your sexuality through purity, to vibrate above your power by staying small and humble, to forgive everyone who's harmed you without ever expressing rage. That's not transcendence. That's spiritual bypassing. And it creates what Jung called the spiritual criminal. Someone so disconnected from their shadow that it acts out unconsciously. Think about every spiritual teacher caught in a scandal, every healer who manipulates vulnerable clients, every wellness guru who's secretly abusing their power. They didn't fall from grace. They never integrated their shadow. It was always there, growing in the dark, waiting to destroy everything they built on the lie of their perfect light. Jung documented case after case. A woman who preached unconditional love began having dreams of torturing the people who came to her for healing. A spiritual author writing about divine feminine energy started experiencing rage so intense she would black out. A meditation teacher who guided others in peace couldn't stop fantasizing about destroying her entire life. None of them were becoming evil. They were meeting the parts of themselves they had used spirituality to avoid. Your shadow is erupting right now. That anger you feel toward the people you're supposed to love unconditionally, that's decades of suppressed rage from being silenced, dismissed, and diminished. That sexual energy that feels too intense, too dark, too powerful. That's your life force returning after years of being told to be modest, pure, appropriate. That destructive urge to burn down everything you've built, that's your power trying to come home after a lifetime of being weaponized against you. Most women can't tolerate this. They either repress harder, using spirituality as a weapon against themselves, or they act out, destroying their lives through unconscious shadow possession. Jung's technique was revolutionary. Active imagination. Don't just observe the shadow. Engage it. Talk to it. Ask it what it wants. Give it a voice, a face, a story. Not to become it, but to understand it. To integrate its energy consciously, rather than being possessed by it unconsciously. The women who survive this first trap learn to dance with the darkness they've been running from. They realize the shadow isn't trying to destroy them. It's trying to complete them. They understand what Jung meant when he said, "I'd rather be whole than good." Because being good as a woman often means being half alive. But even if you integrate your shadow, there's something worse waiting. The second trap that destroys most awakening women. Everyone talks about ego death like it's the ultimate goal. Jung knew better. He watched what happened when women actually tried to kill their ego. They didn't become enlightened. They experienced complete derealization, losing all contact with ordinary reality, unable to function, parent, work, or maintain basic self-care. Here's what nobody tells you. The ego isn't your enemy. It's your container. Without it, you don't transcend reality. You lose contact with it. You don't become spiritual. You become unable to function in the world. But here's where it gets twisted for women. During awakening, the ego doesn't just die. It fights back. And it fights dirty. Jung called this the revolt of the psyche. Your ego has been running your life, thinking it's in control, managing your relationships, protecting your children, maintaining your responsibilities. Then awakening shows it the truth. It's not the master. It's barely middle management. There are forces in your unconscious infinitely more powerful, and they're about to take over. The ego's response is absolute panic, but it's smart. It doesn't fight directly. It infiltrates. It takes your spiritual experiences and claims them. I had the vision. I received the message. I am special. I am chosen. I am awakened. But here's the truth Jung understood. Something moved through you. You are not it. Jung watched this pattern destroy women repeatedly. They'd have genuine spiritual experiences, real contact with the numinous, authentic glimpses of transcendent reality. Then their ego would grab it and twist it. I touch the divine, therefore I am divine. I understand consciousness, therefore I'm more conscious than others. I've awakened, therefore I'm meant to awaken others. This is spiritual inflation, and it's more dangerous than staying asleep, especially for women who've spent their entire lives being told they're not enough, not special, not powerful. The ego hijacks awakening and uses it to finally feel superior, chosen, important. Jung documented a woman, a successful professional in her early 40s, who started having profound synchronicities during her awakening. Everything aligned perfectly. Every thought seemed to manifest. Every desire materialized. She believed she'd cracked the code of reality, that she was chosen to teach other women a new way of being. Her ego had hijacked genuine spiritual opening and turned it into a messiah complex. Within 6 months, she'd left her marriage, abandoned her career, started a spiritual movement promising to liberate women from patriarchal consciousness. Within a year, she was living in chaos, convinced she was the only one who could see through the matrix of female oppression, unable to maintain basic relationships or responsibilities. Jung worked with her for 3 years to help her differentiate between the genuine spiritual content she'd received and her ego's inflation around it. Because here's what happens with spiritual inflation. You're not just unconscious anymore. You're unconscious while believing you're awake. You're not just ego-identified. You're ego-identified with spiritual authority. You're not just asleep. You're teaching other women to sleep while calling it awakening. Every time you think, I'm awakened, and they're not, that's ego inflation. Every time you feel spiritually superior to other women still struggling, ego inflation. Every time you believe you have the truth they need to hear, ego inflation. The ego doesn't die during awakening. It evolves. It becomes a spiritual ego, more sophisticated, more deceptive, more dangerous. Jung saw women who seemed to be progressing beautifully, then overnight developed messianic complexes. They became convinced they were prophetesses, started gathering followers, built movements around their awakening. 2 or 3 years later, complete collapse. Lives destroyed. Families shattered. They required intensive therapeutic support to return to functional reality. The telltale signs Jung identified: they stop questioning themselves. They become certain about everything spiritual. They can't tolerate criticism or differing perspectives. They see signs and messages everywhere confirming their specialness. They believe their thoughts create reality. They think they've transcended human limitations that still apply to everyone else. They feel called to save or awaken other women. What happened? They confused the messenger with the message. They thought because divine content moved through them, they were divine. The women who survive this second trap learn what Jung called relativizing the ego. The ego remains, but it knows its place. Servant, not master. Vessel, not source. Radio, not the signal. Jung's technique: constantly check your inflation. When you feel special, ask yourself, what archetypal energy am I identifying with right now? When you feel chosen, ask, chosen by what part of my psyche? When you feel awakened, ask, what's still asleep in me? The ego needs constant monitoring during awakening, not destruction. Conscious relationship. If you've made it this far, and you're recognizing these patterns in your own awakening journey, you're exactly where you need to be. Subscribe to Dreams in Depths and hit that notification bell, because we're going deeper into the psychology that will actually support your transformation. This isn't Instagram spirituality. This is the real map through the territory that breaks most women. Your inner wise woman knows you need this wisdom. But once your ego realizes it's not in control, once it accepts its demotion from master to servant, you enter what Jung called the void. No old identity, no new identity, no solid ground, just free fall through psychological space. And this is where the third trap opens up beneath you. Jung wrote about attending social gatherings where he could see everyone's shadows projected onto each other. The woman's repressed rage at her husband, the husband's unconscious attraction to the guest, everyone's unspoken dynamics playing out like a psychological puppet show, all invisible to them, blindingly obvious to him. He'd sit there watching, unable to speak what he saw without destroying the entire social fabric. So the awakened withdraw, not from superiority, but from necessity. They can't unsee what they've seen. They can't unknow what they know. This is the ultimate test for awakening women. Can you stay awake in a sleeping world? Can you maintain your truth surrounded by comfortable lies? Can you hold your frequency in a field of constant static? Jung's solution was radical: selective participation. He learned to dose his exposure to unconscious environments. Short bursts with long recovery time, strategic withdrawal when needed, creating what he called temenos, sacred spaces where consciousness could exist without compromise. Most women can't manage this balance. They either disappear completely, becoming hermits, or they create a spiritual persona, pretending awakening while secretly dying inside. The women who survive learn what Jung called holding the tension of opposites. Fully awake and fully engaged, completely conscious and compassionately present, seeing everything and judging nothing. Here's Jung's most devastating truth for women. Awakening isn't an event. It's a lifestyle of dying. Every day, something you thought was true dies. Every week, another identity collapses. Every month, a deeper shadow emerges. Every year, a new ego structure needs dismantling. Jung was still dying to himself in his 80s, still discovering shadows, still integrating new depths. He had a dream near death, where he was a student again, ignorant and seeking. After decades as the master psychologist, his unconscious said, "You know nothing." This is the price of consciousness for women. Eternal beginner's mind, forever dying, forever being born, forever discovering you're not who you thought. The you that started this journey, she doesn't survive. She can't survive. She wasn't meant to survive. What emerges is something else, not better, not higher, not more spiritual, more real, more whole, more consciously, a fully, powerfully human. Jung called it individuation, becoming who you always were before the world told you who to be as a woman, not transcending your humanity, but finally, fully, consciously inhabiting it. This isn't the awakening sold in spiritual marketplaces. It's not bliss. It's conscious suffering. It's not peace. It's conscious tension. It's not arrival. It's conscious journey. So here's what Jung would tell you if he were alive today, speaking directly to women navigating awakening. Stop trying to survive your spiritual awakening. Let it destroy you completely, consciously, with full participation in your own death and rebirth. Let the shadow erupt, then integrate it. Let the ego panic, then relativize it. Let the return break you, then rebuild differently. Not once, daily, forever. The spiritual awakening happening to you right now isn't trying to improve you. It's trying to reveal you, the real you, the one hiding beneath every mask, every people-pleasing persona, every spiritual identity you're clinging to. Your symptoms aren't the problem. They're the cure. Your breakdown isn't failure. It's breakthrough. Your dissolution isn't ending. It's beginning. You're not going crazy. You're going sane. The world just calls sanity crazy because it's so used to sleep.